This is a topic that I think is going to benefit a lot of our society. And so I want to make this video about healing sexual trauma. And the reason that I want to make this video is because it is clear to me that with all of the hookup culture and all of the casual sexual partners that everybody is having and the way that people are treating other people in regards to almost using them as a tool for, I would say, spiritual masturbation in some way, which I don't think is right. I don't think it's a very helpful thing for society, and I think a lot of people have gone through a lot of different kinds of trauma in these acts, and I want to make a distinction between grief and worry versus trauma. Now, trauma is where there's a preconceived notion about a subject from your past that is deep rooted in your psychology. Whereas grief and worry, especially in regards to this topic, is more about you making a mistake and knowing it's a mistake and doing it anyway, and then trying to blame other people for your mistakes. I also think that the way that we approach childbearing in our culture is not helping these kinds of trauma experiences. I think the fact that you can just quote unquote abort a child is not going to be very helpful to, number one, the life that we are creating as a society, but number two is it's showing that we don't really value life. We don't really value it, and we are kind of careless in how we interact with each other sometimes. And I genuinely believe that sex is supposed to be a sacred experience that is of divine quality, and you can still have a very good time, of course. Like, I'm not saying that you can't have a good time, but you should do it with someone that, no pun intended again, but you should do it with somebody that is actually, you're trying to create a meaningful connection with. And it would be, I would say, blasphemy to God, dare I say, to do so otherwise. And the reason for that is because of three different reasons. Number one is that you can possibly create for yourself a form of PTSD from your sexual experiences. You can also have severe distress from your experiences with sex, because I've talked to people throughout my whole life that have been involved with abuse of some kind. And when I say abuse, I mean legitimate abuse. It's not the whole Me Too thing. It's legitimate abuse where there was legitimate... I don't want to go into too many details because I don't feel like addressing super personal descriptions about other people's lives. However, I will say that it is a legitimate form of grape that occurred, and it wasn't a Me Too thing where they just had this overly fun, exceptional time where they could just have that good time. It was someone was legitimately being forced and aggressive into it. And there's a fine balance that you have to find in today's society to do this, but I do think that for the majority of reasons and the majority of people out there, I don't think they really want to be super aggressive when it comes to these kinds of experiences. I think they want to just enjoy themselves. But there's a difference between exercising the pleasures of the flesh, and there's a difference between trying to control the autonomy of somebody else in response to their incapacity to take no as an answer. There's a difference there. And so for anybody that has been abused in childhood sexually, I can assure you that I understand. I know what that's like. Again, I'm not going to go into too many details on this either, especially with my personal life on YouTube, because I don't feel like going to court. But I will say that I've had experiences with this in my childhood, and it was something that I couldn't tell anybody about. At least I didn't feel like I could tell anybody about. And I'm sure a lot of the people out there, specifically the women, because this happens to women more than men, generally speaking. But for the women out there that have been abused in their childhood, you have to understand, women, that it is your responsibility to heal from this. It is absolutely your responsibility to heal. And so I have a list of questions here that I will also leave in the description box below that you can ask yourself to start the healing process. So I'm going to go through and list the questions, and then I'll go through why you ask yourself these questions afterwards. So question number 1, what does your soul want from sex? Number 2, are you tying your personal worth with your sexual marketplace value? Number 3, are there any sexual habits that you have that are not aligned with the highest spiritual channels? Number 4, what is your motive behind seeking sexual experiences? Number 5, how can you reclaim a healthy reverence towards sex after healing from sexually traumatic experiences? Okay, so going to question number 1, what does your soul want from sex? You have to legitimately ask your soul this question. You cannot ask anybody else. You have to ask your soul this question. Think about it. Sit on your bed for 5 to 10 minutes and just let yourself think about this question. What are you trying to get from sex? Let's say that you have been fairly promiscuous as a woman and you want to change that. And you are realizing that this is not the right path. You actually don't want this anymore. You actually don't want to, shake your ass in the club, and you want to just be with a different guy every other weekend, if not every weekend. You want to actually be in a committed relationship now. Well, the thing is that a lot of the people that you're going to want, and this is just a reality that you're going to have to accept, women, this is going to be something that is going to be hard to hear as well, but a lot of the men that you are going to want are not going to want you anymore. And the reason being is because you basically gave away all of your value. So how do you heal from this? Now that you've heard this truth, how do you heal from this? You have to really ask yourself, and you have to heal yourself within you, what it is that you're trying to fill the void of. What are you trying to actually heal from? What kind of abandonment or neglect are you dealing with? And you have to be honest with yourself, otherwise you're not going to be able to heal. And I would also recommend that you find a sturdy man, a stable man in your life that you can rely on in some way for direction. Because you likely, if you are a promiscuous woman, you likely have not ever had or have had very few masculine role models that are positive in your life. And it's likely that you think that a lot of the truly masculine men out there that have a life, that are wanting to share it and are not wanting you to be the center of it. Because that's another thing I've noticed about promiscuous women, is that they want themselves to be the focus of the man's life. Whereas a healthy woman recognizes that she would rather be a part of a man's life that is already full and that wants to share it with her. So you have to look at why and how you can surround yourself with better men to begin with. And number two is that you have to let go of these women that are wanting to keep you single. Single women are going to keep women single. This is just a fact of life. And the birds of the same feather flock together, right? So you have to recognize what is really going on, and you have to accept the brutal, honest truth of this situation. Number two, are you tying your personal worth with your sexual marketplace value? I've talked to a few women in my consultations as well as just in my everyday life where they think that their value as a person is dependent on how they look. And it's like, well, you're not entirely wrong. You're not entirely wrong. However, that doesn't mean that is everything. A woman that truly knows her inner beauty doesn't really need the validation of anybody else out there, right? She doesn't really need that, and she doesn't really want that. It's great if it comes. It's fantastic, but she doesn't really need that validation except from the man that she's chosen to be with. That is the difference. Because women do need to want a man more than the man wants her. Why? Because if a woman wants a man that is making more money than her or living a certain kind of lifestyle than her, like more above social status or whatever the case may be, then if that's the case, then the man is going to have options. And the man is going to be able to choose from the litter, really. You know, he gets to pick and choose which one he wants. And so he's not going to have a problem, but it'll be her job to keep him around. Now, this is something else I've noticed about promiscuous women as well, is that they try to keep you around by only their sex appeal. And they only try to use their sex appeal to keep you around. Whereas a woman that actually does know she's sexy, but she's also feminine, submissive, cooperative, and she's very consistent. Now, what they'll do is something completely different. They'll try to keep you around for reasons apart from just sex. Because let's be real, in this society, you can get it wherever you really want. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy. I've had multiple women within the last year of my semen retention journey. Multiple women that actually have boyfriends too, that are trying to get my attention and trying to do things with me. It's crazy. It's crazy what some of these women will do, even when they're already like with somebody. So they pick the safe person and then they go off and they want to cheat with somebody else. And I don't think that's right either. But that is the society that we live in, as disgusting as it may be. So, are you tying your personal worth to your sexual marketplace value? You have to really work on, what do you bring to the table? Like, are you submissive? Are you cooperative? Or are you an angry, bitter, resentful woman that talks to every man that she sees and is willing to give it up because she wants that attention? Or are you a little bit more quiet And are you a little bit more, not in the shadows per se, but more of a, you just work on what you need to work on and call it a day? That is the kind of woman that is more long-term material. And a woman that is okay being alone. Because a lot of women are communitarians and they need they live for attention and talking and stuff, which it is what it is. Question number 3. Are there any sexual habits that you have that are not aligned with the highest spiritual channels? This is a topic. We're just going to go there. Do you have your toys? What are you doing PMO? Are you doing, and PMO is corn. I won't say the actual term, but it's corn and then masturbation. And then are you also it's just kind of weird talking about this topic sometimes, because I think it's best to just get to the point, but I know that sometimes people can misunderstand the directness. It's just like, no, this is just stuff that needs to be talked about. This is just part of the spiritual practice as well. This is a spiritual channel, and so we have to talk about these things. But are you participating in edging as a man? If you're a man, are you edging? Which means, are you trying to get dopamine hits everywhere you look? Is this girl looking at me? Is this girl looking at me? Oh, she's looking at me. Ooh, that turns me on. Like, are you doing that kind of stuff? Are you checking out women's butts and breasts as they walk by because you just can't help yourself? Or do you have a little bit of self-control? And same goes for the women. Are you just checking men out just to check them out? Are you just trying to see if they're looking at you and you're trying to get their attention because you need them to look at you in order to validate you? I think edging can work both for men and women as far as like trying to just get that dopamine hit, right? Number 4, what is your motive behind seeking sexual experiences? Are you trying to make a genuine connection, or are you trying to just get attention? I think that's really what it boils down to. And number 5, how can you reclaim a healthy reverence towards sex after healing from sexual traumatic experiences? How do you gain self-respect? Really, this is what it comes down to. How do you gain self-respect? How do you treat yourself with respect? Well, you start acting as if you're someone that is to be respected. And you start acting as if your sexuality is not something that is just given away, just for free. Like, you don't just put it wherever you want to put it. And you're actually willing to walk away from a situation. I think that's part of the codependency problems in a lot of these sexual trauma behaviors, is that you're codependent on people because they make you feel a certain way. And oftentimes, the way that you feel is not always logical. And so you have to discern and use discernment on how you're doing that and what you're doing that for. But those are the 5 questions that I would recommend you to examine yourself more about healing the sexual trauma. I hope this message was useful and insightful. And to anybody out there that is curious about healing from sexual trauma, please contact me at regalchange@gmail.com, also in the link below. And then we can schedule a consultation and get you set up for a session so that we can go through your spiritual growth, your emotional and physical growth as well. There's a lot of healing to be done on the body in a variety of different ways. If you need to lose weight, or if you need to gain weight, like if you are a little bit too skinny, or if you're just kind of fat, I mean, those are both things that you need to take into account for with your spiritual health, and something that you need to take seriously. Because if you don't, you're not going to be aligned, and you're not going to be serving the highest spiritual channels that you possibly could be. So with that being said, I hope this message, again, was useful and insightful. Until next time, peace be with you.